Okay, good morning everybody. Je sais qu'il y a ceux que j'espère que la session soit en français, ça sera hybride. C'est acceptable?
I know that some of you are hoping to have the session in French, but it will be hybrid. We'll be exchanging in English and French today. Thank you so much for being here.
The shared accountability in family planning programs. There are many, there's, of course, we will be focusing on the region of West Africa. And this region has been in the minds and the thoughts and readings and writings of development practitioners because, of course, the numbers are not moving as fast as we want it to be. It is evident from the history of development that in many countries, an increase in the adoption of modern contraception has triggered rapid improvements in women's participation, in the labor force, in the welfare of families, and in the overall economy of those societies. But also, most importantly for us, for example, at UNFPA, is the reductions also in maternal mortality, but for everybody else, in the well-being of women and girls. Well, Western Central Africa, especially the Francophone region, can be said to be sort of the last frontier in terms of the empowerment of women and girls and the indicators, the behavior of indicators. Several approaches have been experimented with especially focusing on making sure that the supplies were at the last mile, as we say it, increased investments, funding, even governments now starting to put a bit more funding in contraceptives. However, the needle of the modern contraception and the total fertility rate seems to be remaining stubbornly low. It moves ever so slowly at a snail's pace, and we're wondering why. And today, I think, and we have, in West Africa, we have MCPR has 6%, but we have Cabo Verde has an outlier with over close to 60, I mean, close to what we have here in Asia, for example. And the question is, why is that? Now, I think that what the researchers today will present to us is looking into yet another approach to say, have we perhaps forgotten this or that in our family planning programs? They are focusing mostly on the issues of a shared accountability from be it governments, communities, the practitioners themselves. So I will today present one by one as you will present, and now you have each 15 minutes. You may present in 10 if you want more time for discussions, but you have 15. And as they come up, I will introduce each one of our presenters. So we will start today with Seydou Drabo, who is il est docteur en anthropologie de la santé, récemment diplômé de l'université.
A doctor in anthropology, recently graduated from Oslo University and counselor to the Organization of New Initiatives, ONIDS, and Health Development. We can see it um, on his shirt. His research is based on maternal health, mainly on topics regarding abortion, family planning in the region of West Africa.
In Norway, and he's an advisor at the ONIDS, is wearing even the shirt with his trademark. This is the Organization of New Initiatives in Development and Health. His research is focused on maternal health and reproductive health, especially the issues of abortion and family planning. Without further ado, over to you, Seydou.
Yeah, thank you very much, I don't know if I have to speak in French or.
You can speak in whichever language between French and English makes you more comfortable. Thank you.
Okay, because. Okay, thank you. I'm going to speak in
But
French.
if you speak in Chinese, maybe very few, very few might understand.
Okay, since the slides are in English, so I will speak in French. Uh, donc,
Thank you so much for giving me the opportunity to be a part of this session. I wanted to present you with a study that we conducted regarding accountability and family planning introduced by the government. We decided to conduct this study to see the state of affairs and see what we could do regarding these policies. In Burkina Faso, we must say that family planning resources are underutilized. We must consider that the consequences of this is an increased levels of dire situations, and there are many unsafe abortions performed. To respond to this concern, the government has decided to introduce family planning into the ensemble of care provided and into their coverage. So, 1 year after the introduction of this policy, the new initiatives regarding health development were implemented, and it was decided that we would conduct an evaluation of these policies. Um, I just wanted to present you with the results of said evaluation. Before getting to the results regarding the methodology that we adopted, it was a mixed approach. We mixed quantitative and qualitative approaches and, and started compiling data in September 2020. We focused on the central region and the capital, as well as the east region of Burkina Faso. We compiled information, conducted interviews, um, participated with questionnaires, among other things. We included men, women at a fertile age, members of our communities. Regarding the results, given that these policies were implemented, the first thing that we wanted to see was when we talk about these elements, what are the modalities? Who are the stakeholders that who are the beneficiaries of these policies, and what are the different structures of care that are applied? In Burkina Faso, we have private and public institutions. When it comes to results, we must say that the target audience, the target public is any person of a fertile age, whether man or woman, and all things included in our policies implants, IUDs, surgical methods, etc. Women have a right to a medical follow up after the insertion of any or application of any of these methods. The existing structure in the public sector provides family planning free of charge, services free of charge. And this is a very important element. Given that we've seen the access options, we also considered availability. Even though these options might be free of charge, we needed to analyze the availability of these services throughout our region in order to analyze the satisfaction of our clients, because a service or method might be available but might not be satisfactory to them. A high percentage of responders considered that they were satisfied regarding the gratuity of family planning services. So they were happy with the fact that it was free of charge and they were satisfied. We have to say that 67% confirmed that the services were not only available but also free of charge. Um, this confirms the situation because 29, although not completely free of charge, because 29% of people reported having to pay for some aspect of their medical consultation. So sometimes we can see that sometimes there are difficulties. What are the lessons learned? The fact that we have family planning services free of charge is not enough in terms of the full range of services because even though these services are available, if women have to keep paying to obtain those services, it proves that these are not accessible to all people. Even if there's just one person who has the money to pay for these contraceptive methods, we need to still ask ourselves why they should. The different challenges. The first difficulty that we were faced with were stock and consumable shortages. And therefore, there were unexpected wait times or difficulties. You would go to a clinic, you would resort to a doctor, and they would say, you know what, that we don't have the necessary instrumentation today. Also, when it comes to medication stock, women had the choice to whether obtain a method through a medical doctor or get a new method that they had never used before due to its availability. Most of the time, this was not done because women they tend to do only what is prescribed to them. When it comes to health service agents, or actors, we must insist on quality of care. When staff is unqualified, the rest of the staff present tends to work overtime. So we have to consider quality of services. We also observed that there were different attitudes in terms of care or women themselves, um, whether they decided to get an implant because it was free of charge, but 2 days later they regret it and want to have it removed. Um, so these resources tend to be overutilized, and that leads to a shortage of stock in some cases. Also, in terms of free family planning, there is accessibility. However, accessibility for women in Burkina Faso still depends on the ties and their relationship with their male partners. Um, Therefore, when it comes to family planning, we must remember that they have to first decide whether they will resort to it and then afterwards on a method. When it comes to family planning, we know that this is not a guarantee in and of itself. And so, what did we learn from this research, from this investigation? The fact that we eliminated financial barriers contributed to the furthering of use of family planning services. This is something that was quite positive. However, it was already in our literature. Um, The lack of payment when it comes to family planning does not resolve all issues in terms of that topic. Many women use family planning methods, but there's also a religious component there that we must take into account. And we must consider methods such as the IUD and the issues that the Catholic community has regarding that. The financial situation is must be considered as well because women tend to don't have the power to not have the power to negotiate certain things, and therefore the higher their socioeconomic status, the more access they have to family planning services. Many times after the use of a contraceptive method, family clinics or women tended to minimize secondary effects or side effects of the medications that they were taking. So further information needed to be shared regarding family planning methods. When it comes to the results that we have shared, the challenges that we have faced, and based on these results, we made some recommendations. We must say that in Burkina Faso, family planning methods focus on a specific part of the population, and there is a specific situation when it comes to the health sector and expanding the services provided. We also need to strengthen information on free family planning policies. Once a policy has been approved, has been decreed, then we see many issues in terms of the healthcare structure. And even some tension when it comes to the authorities because they're supposed to know what is going on out in the field. Finally, as I was saying at the beginning, this lack of charge when it comes to family planning services is significant also in terms of universal health coverage purposes so that everyone can have access to health care. The fact that accessibility was not at 100%, affordability was not 100%, all of these elements put in question the lasting effect of these policies. Family planning must be considered as part of insurance coverage. With this, the financial contribution of the community could be carried out throughout the system and to further efforts in terms of public health issues. So these were the results. My colleague will be delving into the issue regarding insurance a little bit further down the road. Thank you so much. Thank you, Seydou.
Speaker, you were focusing on the issue of provision of family planning free of charge. Is that sufficient? We will discuss that during the Q&A question. So we have now Madame Louise Compaoré Zongo, who is a sociologist and a manager of development projects within the same company, ONIS. And she has a master's in sociology and management of projects. She has 4 years of experience in charge of studies and research, 5 also as monitoring and evaluation. Since October 2021, Madame Zongo has been in charge of programs within ONIS, looking into, of course, new initiatives, and she is very, very, at the center of her interests are human rights and the rights of women and girls. So, Madame Zongo, over to you.
Ok. Merci, Madame Argentina. Bonjour à tous.
Thank you, Miss Argentina. Uh, Hi, everyone. I have the pleasure to share the experience of our organization in on new initiatives, the experience of in our experience in health insurance in Burkina Faso. The context: we can say that Burkina Faso has adopted a law to provide free family planning services to improve SRHR care. Despite the government's efforts to improve such rights, we are meeting challenges, and we are seeing that the, the legal and institutional mechanisms are made vulnerable for people to gain access to family planning. And also, ASR, SRHR rights are not being respected. So the civil society should call call out the authorities so that they can respect their commitment. And that's how we reached that law for free family planning in Burkina Faso. When it comes to the methodology and the intervention strategy, we started with advocacy, and it was focused on the director of the National uh, Health Coverage institution, which is an institution which is in charge of universal health coverage. And then we focused on a technical secretary in charge of the universal health coverage, and the Minister of Health himself. And that advocacy was used to draw their attention on the um, implementation of free family planning decided by the states. We also um, built some partnerships with other civil society organizations which are active in that field, such as the network for access to medication, and other organizations such as SONS, the DEFI, and Kimi Foundation, to name but a few. We also conducted an awareness campaign among citizens, and we organized activities such as the Generation Forum and Equality in Burkina Faso. Was part of the organization, and it was through the the commitment of people working in universal health coverage, and also the work of the media. We attended TV programs to uh, draw the authorities' attention to the effectiveness of free family planning. And through social media, we have a Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram page. We are promoting what we do and showing the challenges and how effective free family planning can be. And when it comes to results, through that advocacy, we were able to organize 3 meetings to lobby and to 3 lobbying and advocacy meetings, and we we've tried to mobilize 17 allies in civil society, as I mentioned earlier, and we have also trained 24 agents. We must say that the project is being implemented in 2 regions in Burkina Faso, in the center and in center east, and we need evidence-based data for advocacy. So we trained first 11 agents in those 2 regions, and then we extended the training to other agents in the regions which are monitoring the effectiveness of family planning in public health training in the 13 regions of Burkina Faso. The network for access to medication, which is one of our essential partners, drafts a report every year, and it takes stock of health services as a whole. And it's a report that is published on a yearly basis, and it is well known, and even policymakers use it to make decisions. We have created an alliance with that network, and we have been able to mainstream those data with the effectiveness of family planning in that report. And the report was dealing with the effectiveness of family planning. And with our advocacy, the report now uh, uh, deals with the challenges related to family planning. We have been able to support the review of the strategic plan of the National Health Insurance Fund, and through our advocacy with the director, we realized that there was a strategic plan, but considering, but based on the challenges at that time, the given the challenges we were faced with, the strategic plan was to be reviewed, and some organizations were needed to provide funds to review the plan. And the plan was reviewed and validated during workshops, and the decrees for the implementation of the plan were um, were to be adopted, and but with the two coups that Burkina Faso experienced in 2022, the decrees are have been shelved, um, awaiting the new government. And then we have also appointed 26 champions for family planning UHC. They are awareness agents, so they make people aware in the community on the free family planning, and they also make people aware on what services are free in order to convey the information to the people and to show people that when we say free family planning, what it includes, so that people can be aware, and so that um, they can avoid being uh, uh, taken in by some agents. I don't know what are the impacts of the advocacy. We have realized that citizen monitoring the situation has contributed to improving the offer of free services. Um, so it was a very useful. We also have to note that the security context makes it difficult for women to have access to family planning services, because at the moment several centers are closed, and there are internally displaced people, and family planning is not always a priority in that context. So that is another hurdle to access to family planning. And the mobilization of the um, FPUHC champions also made it easier to convey the information to the people, to make it known that it was free. We also should bear in mind that the free family planning enables a great majority of women to have access to that service. And as my colleague was saying earlier, family planning, if it is not free, and if women are cannot decide on their own, it it makes its success difficult. But when it is free, women are able to have access to such services without asking the financial support of any third party. And lobbying is also a way to involve health authorities in the process. And we are meeting with political leaders on UHC, and currently those leaders are committed to supporting us in order for our advocacy to be successful. And as we said, to on our own we can go fast, but together we can go far. So with all the actors that are active in the field, uh, we can really um, make a difference together. That's what I had to share. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you, Mrs. Zongo.
Few words Madame Songo presented on the effectiveness of the law of Burkina Faso in making family planning free of charge. She looked at aspects of has it worked? And they went to the field, and indeed there are three major factors that helped with making it work. One was that the community kept an eye on health facilities, so there was community monitoring and engagement. Secondly, civil society organizations such as ONIDS also continued, kept their advocacy working, even though there was a decree. That alone they understood wouldn't be enough to make family planning free of charge, so they continued engaging decision makers and community leaders. So I will not uh, I mean, explain everything she said, but that was the gist of the presentation. But one thing was clear in their study was that making family planning free of charge does increase access of those products to women and girls. So we will now move to another region. Well, there are two regions. I guess we'll go further down south to Madagascar. And before I introduce our speaker, I want you to help me welcome His Excellency, the Minister of Health of the Republic of Madagascar, Professor Zeli, who is here with us today. And we thank you, Professor, for taking your time to support this initiative that talks about the engagement of the government to this family planning initiative. So our speaker today is Mr. Kofi Kwame, my own colleague at UNFPA. He is the representative of UNFPA in Madagascar since I think 2 years now, going 2 years. But and he's also country director for Comoros, Mauritius, and the Seychelles, all those beautiful, great islands over there. Kofi has served in many positions of leadership in UNFPA, including as representative in Afghanistan and Papua New Guinea. He obtained his master's degree in management of international organizations from the Bocconi School of Management in Milan, Italy, and his master's degree in demography from the Institute of Formation and Research, Ilford, the famous Ilford, for those who know some of the big names of training in West Africa. Kofi, at this point, I hand over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Argentina. Mesdames et messieurs, bonjour.
Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. We appreciate your presence here. It shows your commitment to the issues that we're going to discuss. We'll now go to Madagascar straight away. As you know, Madagascar is the fifth largest island in the world. The demographic projection is 28 million, area of it's very large. As you can see, this island is in the ocean, the Indian Ocean, in Eastern Africa. Madagascar's population is growing 3% per year, which means that every year there are about 800,000 people more. The population is young, and they account for 2/3 of the 28 million people. Madagascar's population lives in the rural areas mostly, 80% of them, and the population is faced with poverty. 81% of the population lives with less than $1 a day. And Besides all that, Madagascar is also affected by the impact of climate change. We have droughts in the south, you have floods, uh, hurricanes on the eastern flank of Madagascar. Now, for family planning, we we know that in Madagascar about 25% are women of age to have children, and the 34.7% of young people are between 10 to 24 years old, and the, the rate of contraceptive prevalence is about 43%. The level um, of fertility is quite high. We are experiencing issues related to um, uh, obstetric fistulas, and there are still too many women who die because of complications during the labor. So that's the background. And when it comes to family planning, there are uh, several issues. For example, the financing of family planning. How can we make sure that we will move from from funding to to finance family planning, and then also uh, the availability, accessibility uh, of the services, because of the fact that the population is spread through, throughout the country, and it means that when healthcare are provided in a certain place, sometimes it takes hours to reach that the health center, and also the issue of the ownership of the, the public, and also securing uh, all the products such as contraceptives method. How can we have them so that we can help provide those services? As you know, if we do not have the product, we cannot provide the services. So it led us to engage in high level um, actions to have the support of national authorities, starting with the creation of a conducive environment to implement family planning activities through the decree on family planning. And it gives access to everyone, and including young people. And what is interesting in this decree is that some product used in health and reproduction can be deducted from, in your taxes. Also, the im, im, employment emergence in Madagascar has been introduced, and that is also very important um, to be at a very high level, and at the community level, the involvement of community leaders can also help fight against social and cultural uh, hurdles that can be an obstacle. And also the state's financial commitment. You'll see, I'll give you an example later on. So those are the results that we've been able to obtain through these different commitments. With the support of the partners such as the UNFPA and others, the President of the Republic accepted to champion family planning in Madagascar. So he was sworn in on the 28th of September 2021, and he gave clear instructions so that the commitment that he signed through the FP 2030, because he signed, so he made the commitment to increase the prevalence of contraceptive from 43% to 60%. So he wants to reach 60% by 2023. Therefore, the Minister of Health gathered um, his team, his partners, to implement a plan to expedite that um, objective, so to reach that um, prevalence rate. And then resource allocation to reach 60% is good. It's a good objective, but you need the resources. So through this initiative on the 26th of September of this year, the Minister of Health, together with his counterpart in the Minister of Finance, because let's not forget that the money is with the Minister of Finance, so both have to commit to the financing. So 5% of the total yearly cost to procure family planning products, about $600,000. They've also created incentives in order to promote the use of contraceptives. So all regions had to be involved. All regions had to be involved through a system, reward system that was set up by the Ministry of Health and its partners to reward the regions with the highest um, results in that field. So it really helped encourage the regions to provide services to people. And finally, because the president himself pledged, and the National Assembly also pledged to to do something. So all our other partners, the World Bank, USAID, or the UK, or Norway, all these partners committed to supporting the financing of family planning activities. So, what are the lessons learned? Well, in order to be organize the swearing in ceremony, we had to do it in partnership with the Minister of Finance of Population. So we defined what we call the investment frameworks. So the investment framework for family planning and also for SRHR and the people-based violence. Also, those frameworks helped us have the evidence we needed to organize the roundtable, after which the president accepted to champion family planning. That commitment of the president really had an impact on the population and influenced people to better implement those strategic intervention with a strong commitment from the donors, and also the partnership between the Ministry of Health and UNFPA, and also other partners such as the World Bank, the UK, Norway, and others really helped reposition family planning on national in a national context. Here I'll show you some pictures of what was done. That's that's the day they signed the FP 2030, where they pledged to support the implementation, and the FAO with the US, and then the UK, and at the bottom the Minister of the Economy and Finance, our Minister of Health, who is here with us, where we signed the country compact, where the government officially pledged to finance the family planning action in Madagascar. And that picture that you can see here, the last picture with the president of the Senate and the Minister of Health and of Population, all the high-profile government agents, and here the World Bank, Norway, here the UK, the Americans, the private sector. So it's important because the private sector provides lots of financing. So with all that, we can say today that family planning was has gained more traction in Madagascar and has a new place on the chessboard, and all in the work carried out by the Minister of Health in Madagascar in 1 year, we have moved, we have reached almost 50% for the use of contraceptives. So that's what I wanted to share with you. I wanted to tell you that when we involve the authorities, when we show them why it is important to invest in development and to use family planning as a development tool, not only a tool to improve health, but also an entry point to breathe um, life in other development sectors. That's what we can reach. Thank you very much. Thank you.
And to our participants, Mr. Kofi, the representative of UNFPA in Madagascar, has just presented to us how when the government is very engaged, especially from the highest level of the President of the Republic himself, he was, of course, it's possible to mobilize the rest of the government, including the Minister of Finance, who is usually a little bit, the harder nut to crack with issues of family planning. So he presented to us that with the engagement of the president himself, through the images that you saw, the Minister of Health was able to put an acceleration plan, and the Minister of Finance allocates funds and has engaged to allocate 5% of all the needs and signs a compact with UNFPA to continue increasing those investments in family planning every year. So there was also a law that is passed on family planning, and this has also made its way to all the high level and important documents of the country, making family planning really at the center. And he ended by saying that family planning finally is being seen as like a trigger or at the center of other development goals in the country. So thank you, Kofi. Thank you, His Excellency the Minister, who is here today. The last but not least speaker who is with us today is Ms. Fatim, who brings us back to West Africa. Fatim is an engineer by training. It's interesting because usually we don't see this kind of brain in this, so in the development field, so that's good. And she has more than 10 years of experience in public health. She is based in Dakar, in Senegal, and she also works for an NGO called Samasha as a regional manager for West Africa since 2021. In her role, she's in charge of the implementation of the so-called motion tracker as a mechanism and a tool of follow-up of the commitments of FP 2030 in the 9 countries of the Ouagadougou Partnership in West Africa. Ms. Fatim is also in charge of the introduction of the joint accountability concept in the 9 countries. Ms. Fatim.
Merci beaucoup, Madame Argentina, et bonjour à tout le monde. Donc, mon sujet aujourd'hui.
Thank you very much. I will now deal with the new frontier in joint accountability and the case of Niger. so the background, the involvement of civil society has increased since the Ouagadougou Partnership and now the FP 2030. Since 2019, in West Africa, we have introduced the motion tracker, which is a non-accountability approach that follows a monitoring mechanism of the FP 2030. But despite the involvement of civil society and the progress that we have noticed on accountability and the progress between and the relationship between civil society and the government, we noticed that there still needs to be some improvement on the understanding of the subtleties of uh, accountability in health system. And Senegal, Benin, and Niger were chosen as pilot countries to introduce joint accountability in West Africa. So the first question that we ask, what is joint accountability? Well, it helps um, strengthening the accountability ecosystem and challenges for this particular engagement. And we see the relation with the motion tracker because that's what helps us identify that engagement and to analyze it with joint accountability. Therefore, we can see that there is a link between the motion tracker and joint accountability. Joint accountability was designed by IHP Plus and rolled out in 8 countries. And in these 8 countries, it is adapted at the national and community level in order to strengthen accountability in the health sector and when it comes to family planning. The Center for Joint Accountability is a workshop which gathers the government and other stakeholders in the field of family planning and encourages them to review the accountability terms and to map out different challenges. In July 2021, Samasha, together with HP Plus and with the support of the Partnership of Ouagadougou, was able to organize a workshop on joint accountability in Niger. And during that workshop, we were with the Minister of Finance and Health, and also civil society was there, and also youth associations and other local organizations which work in the field of family planning in Niger. Thanks to the workshops and very structured activities, participants were able to have a better understanding of the different terms of accountability and different types of accountability. And it also helped us better understand the role they have to play in Niger's health system. What needs to be understood is that that accountability workshop is 4-day long workshops, only 4 presentations. More the rest is activities, working groups, role plays where young people are encouraged to take up the role of the government in order to have a better understanding of the roles of all the stakeholders that are involved in the health system. And during the workshop, participants chose the low involvement of young people and as a specific target. Once the activities are organized, they are given the opportunity to map out all the actors, all the stakeholders, and also to and also they are to decide what has to be done to better improve the situation, and also the relationship between young people. Samasha decided to work with a neutral organization was in charge of the implementation of the motion track in Niger. So it's a Matassa company. The idea was to make it life easier and to create a link between the two accountability tools. Samasha and HP Plus supported the stakeholders in the implementation of the action plan, and the results are, first of all, youth engagement. Since the workshop until May, 100 young people in 4 regions in Niger have been trained on the aspect related to um, research these issues. And in this campaign, young people have received the support of other partners such as FactFinder, MSI. But what should be underscored is that they have been supported by the RPF, which is a civil society coalition that is based in Niger and which is very much involved in family planning. There were, there has also been some other digital campaigns, and they were organized without financial support. It shows the commitment of young people in Niger. And information sharing has also been improved between young people and other stakeholders. Some WhatsApp platforms were created, and young youth focal point were also established in the country. Let's not forget that Niger is a very it's a very large country, so uh, the young people used WhatsApp to really get close to the KPF, and there is a better communication between our focal point, who was um, a youngster, and the DPF, which is the family planning in Niger. And young people are more involved in the planning of projects that are targeting them. We can say that there is mutual respect that has been established between young people and other stakeholders involved. Now, lessons learned. First, the role of young people. We realized that young people in Niger only needed to build their capacity. After the workshop, once they have a better understanding of accountability, young people feel much more engaged. If we have satisfactory results on joint accountability in Niger, it is thanks to young people and their commitment. We can all bear testimony to the commitment of young people who, during the FP23 engagement in the 9 countries. There was also an issue with the correlation between the motion tracker and joint accountability. The joint accountability workshop was held 3 weeks after the first workshop for the FP22 and 2020 in Niger. So there was confusion. Why should we adopt two accountability approaches at the same time? They didn't understand that the two approaches were complementary. They were not exactly the same. In order to avoid a repeat of such a situation in the future, SEMSA decided to introduce a joint accountability in the motion tracker. So very soon we'll no longer talk about two approaches in West Africa, but rather joint accountability will become a step of the motion tracker. The motion tracker will be much more exhaustive.
We also saw some issues specific to each country. We wanted to have the same approach in Niger, in Senegal, and in Benin. However, we soon realized that that was going to be impossible just because of the fact that we were not talking about the same cultures, the same agents, and the realities are different. So we will have to try to adapt to the field and the local culture before introducing this joint accountability. So, for further information regarding joint accountability and even the motion tracker, um, you can contact Cornelia Asimwe from the Samasha Foundation. We also have a detailed brief where you can find information for Senegal and Benin.
Can you can reach out to Cornelia Asimwe, who's the program director for Samasha. And then there's a detailed brief, more detailed brief on the study case in Niger and Sénégal and Benin on healthpolicyplus.com. Donc, c'était ça ma présentation sur la redevabilité conjointe. Merci de...
Thank you so much for having listened to my presentation. I hope you'll have some questions for me. Thank you so much. What a disciplined panel. It's a pleasure. So we just heard from Ms. Fatim Diouf.
Samasha introduced as a mechanism to follow up on the joint accountability between different, intervenants in family planning, be it government, communities, young people, different interest groups. And she was looking at the specific case of Niger, calling our attention towards the end that they realized very quickly when trying to adapt the same approach to other countries, Benin and Senegal, that it was not possible to adapt exactly this copy carbon, the same approach. And so she cautions us to try to adapt whatever methods and approaches we bring to the specificities of the countries and their cultural context. So Tamasha went, in terms of trying the motion tracker, went beyond just holding a workshop which focused on young people. Beyond the workshop, they helped those young people come up with work plans, followed them up, strengthened their capacity to advocate, to link with other decision makers and community leaders. And so they found that today in Niger, those young people who have benefited from their trainings and follow-ups by Motion Tracker are much stronger, and they're able to channel their voice where it needs to be it at the community or at the government level. Ladies and gentlemen, these were our four speakers on joint accountability. We're now open for questions, answers, and comments. And by the way, ONID's colleagues who presented, they have two other colleagues seated in the audience who are co-writers with them on this research. So they will be also able to jump in and respond whenever there's a question. Okay, we have one here. We already have three. Okay, four. All right. Oops. So I'll start with you here, the gentleman in white, over to the back, and then I'll come to the front, the two here, and madam. Thank you. Vous entendez? Il faudrait peut-être... oui, voilà.
The interpreting booth apologizes. The microphone is not working. Hello, everyone. Thank you to each of our panelists for the quality of your presentations. Je viens du Mali. I come from Mali. My question is for our presenter regarding our presentation regarding Burkina Faso. Um, what I wanted to know today is what are the exact financing mechanisms for this gratuity that you're talking about? Because we have to involve, are we talking about NGOs, public servants? Who are the stakeholders and how does the system finance these services, subsidize the services? Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Next question. Let's take note of the questions. Thank you. I am Dr. Sar. I am the executive director of the social marketing agency for Senegal. I'd like to thank the presenters for your presentations today. My first question is for the first presenter with a little side comment. In my opinion, gratuity is a true challenge, especially in a developing country. And us, as stakeholders regarding family planning, we must observe policies and make decisions based on evidence. In Burkina Faso, is accessibility to services, the availability of these services, are these tied to a financial barrier? It seems to me that if we manage to prove that the financial barrier represents an obstacle, then we could go on to define these services and make them free of charge. However, with the results that you presented, you say that 29% of women pay for these services. There are also some issues regarding abusive use or overuse of these services or products. I would have liked the study to go further to show the impact of this accessibility to these services free of cost in terms of the increase in use of contraceptive products. Does this have an impact in prevalence? My second question for our second presenter, it's great to foster the integration in terms of universal coverage. You conducted several activities. However, can we say today that services are truly integrated in Burkina Faso? Because the purpose of advocacy is just that, for it to lead to a decision. My final comment is for the UNFPA. We really acknowledge the engagement of the leaders of Madagascar regarding family planning. I believe we can all agree that if there is an engagement at a higher level, we can truly foster family planning services, the use of contraceptive methods, etc., and that there will be a participation in terms of purchasing contraceptive methods. Uh, in Madagascar, have you planned for a progression in terms of the yearly government contribution? Or have they just planned to contribute 5% all the time? Is there any plan for the next few years? Thank you, sir. We have 10 minutes until we wrap up, so we're going to be very brief with our comments and answers. Thank you so much. I come from DRC. I'm from Franco Cambodge. Thank you all. My question is for the UNFPA representative. Can we get a little more detail in terms of that process of engagement at the highest level, reaching the head of state? Are we talking about technical and financial partners who took it upon themselves to initiate that advocacy, or was it coming, or did it stem from other organizations or society? Thank you so much. I have two concerns. The first one has to do with the Burkina Faso presentation regarding the gratuity of family planning services. I wanted to know if it's possible that the presenter um, share in a few words the ties that we can make between that policy and service quality, because many times, quite often, people perceive that everything that is free is not good. Is there any tie there? Is there anything you can share with us regarding that point? My second question is for the Madagascar representative. Congratulations for on your presentation. Youth represent two-thirds of our population. Is there a specific policy that targets them specifically? To what point are youths taken into account in these policies and this engagement? Are they beneficiaries, but can they also become actors and intervene at different levels? Are there mobilizations or creations of different aspects? So to what level are they involved? Thank you. Thank you to all our presenters. My question has to do with the UNFPA presentation regarding Madagascar. I wanted to your comment on the rate of prevalence. I think in Madagascar it was at 8, and I find, or 15, I believe, and I find that formidable. I find that wonderful compared to other countries. I want to know what was the contribution of the community. 43% of that prevalence is something that's quite good compared to other countries. What is the Madagascar approach to so that it managed to progress this way? And finally, our last question. Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much. I'd like to also congratulate all of our presenters, our panelists, for sharing all of this significant information. I'd like to begin first by with our first presenter. It's true that um, that this presentation was quite specific, but you were talking about overuse of products. You were saying that there is abusive consumption of these products, especially when it comes to long-term products. So my question is, I believe that perhaps we might insist on it being an informed and free choice. We need to take ethics into account, and also regarding a recommendation of the delegation in terms of it being a significant strategy, and we must remember the state's active participation through the resolution of the Ministry of Health in 2017. And so perhaps we can use that as a base to foster, to help other countries move towards those goals. Regarding the second presentation, in terms of advocacy for efficacy of PEF in terms of health insurance, I think that's an important point to make because people are working really hard to move towards an acceptance on behalf of clients, and Senegal is no exception to this case. We are working on it really becoming an integral and efficacious program. And finally, regarding the fourth presentation, actually, no, the UNFPA presentation regarding Madagascar. I think that my colleague from Senegal has spoken already, but I think it's an important engagement at that high level. We have seen in Senegal the effects of the Global Contraception Day co-celebrated with Morocco, and we see Morocco having 70% of TPCs, which is tied to these policies. Thank you so much. I think that there has been great interest in the Madagascar presentation. It's not because His Excellency is here. Would you like to say something? Because I think there's a lot of interest on behalf of the audience. Thank you. Congratulations to those who presented. Everything was quite clear and allowed us to truly get an idea of what is happening in the African continent. Regarding the Madagascar participation, um, and the progressive increase of 1% per year, and that dynamic of reaching 5% at a specific time. Regarding the strategy, I would recommend we all use new technologies because in fact, we use, for example, WhatsApp at our ministries, and in fact, I am in touch with all directors of ministries at a regional level, all inspectors and heads of hospitals in the region, and that is the way we provide instructions that they follow, and that has allowed us to create this dynamic. In fact, the second way to do this is to simplify things. When we speak of percentages, when we speak about numbers, this complicates things. In Madagascar, for example, we were talking about a 70% coverage. Um, but when we start counting, we're talking about 1.7 million. When we made these calculations, we stated that if each center were to include one woman per day, we would reach 60%. That's how I have done it. When you tell people, you know what, we're going to reach this number, they usually tend to lose faith and get confused. And so we'll just usually tell them that you need to convince but one person about that. Um, in terms of our work at the population, at the community level, we're talking about colleagues who usually communicate strong messages to the communities. It's easier to accept through specific channels based on specific criteria of the community and what they listen to. Thank you so much, Mr. Minister. Thank you. An applause for the leadership. Thank you. Okay, so now let's hear from our speakers. You have 2 minutes each because we've already run out of time. Okay, so apparently I have to begin. I think that regarding all four questions posed, I think the minister has answered a few. I'll answer a couple of them. In terms of participation, I think that you are right. But what's interesting in Madagascar is that through the Ministry of Youth and in combination with the Ministry of Health, I believe that there are actions that are undertaken to make youth participate further, not only in terms of creating different or making further and different decisions concerning development. I believe that since last April, we organized the Inforum Legion, which employs youth development, and it brought together all of our ministries, including the technical and financial partners, such as the WLO, UNFPA, UNIDS, among others, to allow our youths to address this, to address the questions that are specific to their situation, their condition. And so the Ministry of Youth is charged with this plan. It works with the different technical, financial partners, etc., so that our youths can set in motion the different plans that stemmed from this work. Thank you. Thank you. Louise, go ahead. Very well. I'd like to begin with the integration of FP to universal health coverage. We must say that in Burkina Faso, the fact that the government has undertaken measures to make family planning services free of charge, this is part of the measures undertaken by government to address poverty. So there's an objective there of integrating family planning in terms of health coverage so that we can eternalize the access to family planning services because of all of the things we see. We know that if with the current situation, it is difficult to find the financing to provide free services. However, if family planning is integrated into universal health coverage, then it will work better. Someone had also asked, does this foster the adoption of these methods? Indeed, we see an increase in the number of FP clients in healthcare services. I don't have the specific percentages with me right now, but it's something that is quite evident because we have a population that did not have the means to cover or pay for these methods. Now that that's done, these sectors of the population are free to access these services. Thank you. So, ONIDS. I'm not going to answer the questions that have already been answered, but regarding accessibility and family planning, we must say that when we talk about accessibility and free services, we must consider the different products in a general way. However, when we take into account the social-cultural context, most women who have access to these services, they are forced to take a break from their daily activities to attend a consultation service at the clinic. So we're talking about time and money lost because they travel long distances to have access to those services. I believe that we must also integrate couples, but and analyze the price of this access. I think that when it comes to prevalence of contraceptive methods, um, we have seen that there has been a contribution to the increase in prevalence of contraceptive methods. We have undertaken an evaluation. We undertook an evaluation in 2021 regarding stability, knowledge, etc. It's difficult to say that we don't need any further research on that matter. We would also insist on the fact that there is work that has already been done, but when we talk about delegations here, we really wish that the different actors, the different stakeholders present, not necessarily those who work around maternity, there needs to be an opportunistic approach. The people working in trauma at a hospital or other areas, they should be able to inform their patients regarding family planning. So I believe that we need to have a better and more opportunistic approach. Thank you. Perhaps we can answer the rest in the hallway. Thank you. Final chance, Ms. Fatim Diouf. Do you have anything to say? No, I didn't have, I wasn't going to answer a question, but perhaps I can use this opportunity to create some awareness regarding the importance of strengthening skills for civil society and especially for our youths. When we hear about approach explanations, perhaps uh, we're talking about approaches that we can adopt elsewhere, but we do need to create that awareness and strengthen civil society's capacity to advocate throughout the population. Ladies and gentlemen, a round of applause for our presenters and to all of you for having participated. Thank you, everyone.